All right, guys. I'm going to go in there and tell you where I am. See what I can get here. All right, so I'm going to start reading chapter 2 now. And if you can't hear it now, it's going to be saved and you'll be able to access it at your own time. All right, so chapter 2 begins. Lincoln has just entered the Ford's Theater with his wife, Major Rathbone, and Clara Harris. Ulysses S. Grant was not able to make it. Great, Dean. You follow along. You have any questions, just write them in. And if you need me to stop or discuss something with you, that'll be perfect. Love that you're here. Let's see what we can get going here at least. All right, so John Wilkes Booth is outside Ford's Theater. Lincoln sits in. The crowd's all settled in. The play is about to begin. Things are exciting. And here we go. Legend has it that John Wilkes Booth was hiding outside in the shadows near the front door of Ford's as the presidential carriage rocked down the dirt street and slowed. Wherever he was, it is almost certain that he had somehow watched with his own eyes to be certain that Lincolns were actually inside the theater. And he probably wondered whether other guests in the box were the type who would pose a threat to his plans. It didn't matter, really. No one was going to stop him from going through with it. It was now about 9 o'clock p.m. Time for Booth to go inside the theater for the first time since the Lincolns had arrived. Although the actor had entered the theater after the performance had started, he was still on schedule. Remember, 10 o'clock was the go time. They were all looking to do this. They were looking to murder the Vice President Johnson, the Secretary of State, Seward. All this was going to happen at 10 o'clock. So he still has about an hour before he has to attack Lincoln. At 9 o'clock, time for Booth to go inside the theater for the first time since Lincoln had arrived. Okay. The play was like a clock. Every word spoken was another tick of the second hand. After hearing some familiar dialogue, Booth would know to the minute how much time remained in the performance. He knew that he had at least another hour. He left Ford's. In a little while, he returned to his alley stable where he had left his rented horse, a bay mare. He led the horse down the alley by the reins to the back door of Ford's Theater. He asked the theater employee, Edmund Spangler, to hold his horse for him. Spangler said he was too busy moving scenery. Another theater employee named John Peanut, I call him Johnny Peanuts, for the snack he sold to the theater patrons, held the reins of Booth's restless horse while the actor went inside. Now, believe it or not, Johnny Peanuts here is just holding the horse, no idea what's going on, and he's going to get in some trouble for this, believe it or not. The president gets killed, anyone involved is going to be questioned, and poor Johnny Peanuts is at the wrong spot at the wrong time. Once inside Ford's, Booth wanted to cross behind the stage to the other side of the building where a door led to a narrow passageway that ran to the front of the theater. Booth asked an employer if he could sneak across the stage, concealed by the scenery. That was impossible, he was told, as a scene that required the full stage was being performed, and there was nowhere to hide from the audience by creeping behind the scenery. Instead, Booth would have to cross under the stage and emerge on the other side. Booth lifted a trapdoor and dropped down into darkness. He could hear the wooden planks of the stage creaking overhead, the distant, muffled voices of the actors, and laughter from the audience. He climbed the stairs at the end of the passageway, nudged open the trapdoor, and entered the area that ran lengthwise between Ford's and the saloon next door. He emerged on 10th Street. Anyone who saw him now would assume he had come down 10th Street to take in the play. No one in the theater, except a few employees, knew he had a horse waiting out back. There was time for one last drink. All right, so I got a couple people here emailing me. I'll go if you don't want. YouTube. Ava commented. Awesome. All right, little by little, we're getting some people in. Very happy about that. Hopefully, we're going to get this full working by tomorrow or by Monday at the latest. Okay, so now here we go. So he had to grab a drink. He's probably a little scared, a little nervous, a little excited. Booth walked into the Star Saloon at around 10 o'clock p.m. The narrow, dimly lit saloon attracted actors, stagehands, and playgoers from Ford's Theater next door. Alone, he drank whiskey. Any customers who recognized the handsome, best dressed man in Washington kept it to themselves and did not disturb him. Booth slapped a few coins on the bar and left without saying a word. As he exited onto 10th Street, he noticed the president's carriage parked, waiting to take Lincoln back home. Excuse me. In the alley behind Ford's, Johnny Peanuts walked Booth's impatient horse back and forth. It was time Booth entered the theater lobby, listening to the dialogue on stage. He was still on schedule. He climbed the curving staircase to the balcony, following the same path the Lincolns took to their box. He walked slowly along the wall. One theater patron, still hoping to witness General Grant's arrival, looked up from his first floor seat and saw a man approaching the box. He recognized Booth. But remember, this wasn't strange to anybody because John Wilkes Booth was an actor. He was supposed to be there. That's where he lived. So him being there is not strange at all to anybody. Booth could see the door of the vestibule that led directly into the president's box. What he saw, what he did not see, surprised him. The door was unguarded. He expected to see an officer, a soldier, or at least a policeman seated there. Instead, seated near, but not blocking the door, was Lincoln's servant, Charles Forbes. Hey, Allie. Booth showed Forbes something. To this day, no one knows what words they exchanged or what Booth showed him. Was it a letter or a calling card? A card with Booth's name on it would open almost any door in Washington. Forbes did not attempt to stop him. Hey, Ava. Booth turned the doorknob and pushed open the vestibule door. There was no guard. No one stood between him and the President of the United States. Now, guys, hold on. My family's just coming in from outside. It should be pandemonium breaking out. Guys, I'm reading in here, so don't go crazy. You want to read about President Lincoln getting shot? Not yet? All right. Inside the box, the Lincolns were enjoying themselves, not because of the play, but simply from being together out of the White House during their happiest week in Washington. Seated in this rocking chair, perhaps thinking of their carriage ride that afternoon, Lincoln reached out and held Mary's hand. In pretended embarrassment, Mary scolded her husband for his boldness. What will Miss Harris think of my hanging on to you so? Lincoln replied, to the last words he would ever hear his wife speak. She won't think anything about it. He smiled at her affectionately. Booth closed the outer vestibule door behind him so quietly that no one heard anything. Bending down, he felt along the edge of the carpet near the wall for the pine bar, part of a music stand he had hidden there that afternoon. When no one was watching, he had entered Ford's, sneaked into the vestibule and box, and made his preparations. He found the bar, grabbed it with both hands, and wedged it tightly between the wall and the door. Now, no one could follow him into the president's box. All right, so what's going on is very simple. You have four people sitting watching the play. You have a door that leads into their box. What Booth did is he snuck into that little room. There's like a little vestibule, a little waiting area from the hallway, in between the hallway and the president's box. He locked himself in there so nobody could get in. He put a bar there, so now no one's allowed in that room, just him. And obviously the four people that are in there. There's no way out for him either. So if he's looking to get out, he plans on jumping onto the stage if once he commits the crime. So there we go. The actor's black eyes adjusted to the darkness while fixing on the only light in the dim room, a faint pinpoint of light coming from the peephole that someone, probably Booth, had bored through a panel of the door into the box. Booth peeked through the dot of light on the door, seeing the interior of the box. Lincoln sat at the far left of the box, closest to Booth, in his rocking chair. The left side of the president's body turned toward the audience. He faced the stage below. Mary sat to Lincoln's right, seated on a wood chair. On her right was Clara Harris, and next to her, Major Rathbone, seated on a sofa. Booth could enter the box and shoot Lincoln without having to get past the major. I wish we were in class now. I could really show you how they would see what's going on. I'll show you a picture, though. See if I can find one right now so you can get a visual. All right, okay, there's that. There's that. Let me just get a better picture of it. Let's see. Give me 2 seconds. This is the best one I can find right now. I'm going to post some of you later so you can see it on the Google Classroom. But that's basically, you can see that, what's going on and how he's sneaking up from behind them. Hey, Alexa, how are you? I'm sure you remember this book. Let's see. Okay. Now, okay, so here we are. On stage, there were 4 scenes left before the end of the play. It was around 10 o'clock p.m. Booth plunged his hands into his pockets and withdrew his weapons. In his right hand was the .44 caliber Derringer pistol, and in his left a sharp Rio Grande camp knife. The actor, Harry Hawk, entered the stage. It was not time yet. There was too many actors still on stage. Booth listened to the dialogue of the play for his signal. In a few moments, Booth knew Harry Hawk would be alone on stage and would speak a line guaranteed to produce such energetic laughter that it would drown out the sound of just about anything, including Booth hoped the sound of a pistol shot. So if we remember Tuck Everlasting, when they were trying to break May out of the jail cell, they waited for the thunder to hit because they wanted the distraction of the sound. Same with Booth is. He wanted the people to be hysterical laughing so that they didn't hear the gunshot, which it would enable him a little bit of time to get away. And that's really what he's looking to do here. So here we go. Last couple of minutes for Lincoln, unfortunately. Booth's thumb pulled back the hammer of the Derringer until he heard it cock into firing position. His hand reached for the doorknob. Though he could not see the stage, he could hear the dialogue. Now, Booth knew only 2 actors remained on stage. The tension was unbearable. The dialogue spoken on stage no longer sounded like words, but like the last ticks of a dying clock winding down. It was 10:13 p.m. Once Harry Hawk was alone on stage, Booth opened the door and stepped into the president's box. Hawk began reciting the last sentence Lincoln would ever hear, a series of corny insults that delighted the audience. Lincoln was so near, if Booth wished to, he could reach out and tap him with the muzzle of the pistol. No one in the box had seen or heard him enter. They all continued to watch the action on stage. Booth began the performance. He had rehearsed in his mind again and again. He stepped forward toward Lincoln, raised his right arm to shoulder height, and extended the pistol forward. He was so close to the president now that all he had to do was point the Derringer. Booth squeezed the trigger. The comic line spoken by Harry Hawk, "You sock-a-dozzling old man trap." No idea what that means, but at the time it was a huge insult and would draw a huge crowd laugh. It was followed by an explosion of laughter from the audience. The black powder charge exploded and spit the bullet toward Lincoln's head. The muzzle flash lit the box for a moment, like a miniature lightning bolt. Had Booth succeeded? If he had only wounded Lincoln, then the president, even at 56 years old, would have been a worthy opponent. The idea of the president fighting back against a young, leaping, and sword-fighting actor is not as far-fetched as it sounds. Hey, Julia. With his creased and weary-looking face atop a thin 6'4" frame, President Lincoln might have looked old and weak. The war had taken its toll, but beneath his baggy coat and trousers, there was a lean and strong body. Too soon doctors would discover and be amazed at the apparent difference in age between his face and his body. We had talked yesterday. President Lincoln was in great shape, very strong man. lean, tall, and skinny, but very muscular, which I never really knew. Lincoln had not seen Booth coming. The bullet struck him in the head and on the lower left side, just below the ear. The ball ripped through his chestnut-colored hair, cut the skin, penetrated the skull, and because of the angle of Lincoln's head at the moment of impact, made a diagonal tunnel through Lincoln's brain. Gross, I know. The wet brain matter slowed the ball's speed, absorbing enough of its energy to prevent it from exiting the other side of the skull through the president's face. The ball came to rest in Lincoln's brain behind his right eye. Lincoln never knew what happened to him. His head dropped forward, his body lost all muscle control and sagged against the rocking chair. The sound of the pistol shot hung in the box for several seconds. It traveled to the stage below and echoed throughout the theater. The pistol shot did startle some people in the audience. Some thought it was part of the play. Some people did not hear it at all. Major Henry Rathbone, seated in the box just feet away from the president, was an experienced Army officer, familiar with the sounds of gunshots. He was the first to realize that something was very wrong. He turned to his left. The smoke from the gun, now tinted red from the gaslights, partly blocked his vision. Rathbone rose from his seat and stepped in the direction of the president. At that moment, he saw a wild-eyed man, his face ghastly, ghostly against his black clothes, hair, and mustache. Like a demon, Booth emerged from the cloud of black powder and sprang at him. Rathbone lunged for Booth, grabbing him by the coat. The assassin broke free, shouting, "Freedom!" and throwing his right arm up as high as he could reach. Rathbone saw what Booth had clenched in his fist, a large, shiny knife, its blade pointed directly down at him. At the last moment, Rathbone raised his arm to protect himself for what was intended to be a death blow. The major grunted in pain. His quick defensive move had saved his life. But the blade sliced through his sleeve and into his upper arm. Blood gushed from the deep wound. Booth wasted no more time finishing off Rathbone. The clock in his head was still ticking down. If he was going to escape the theater, he had to get out of the box at once. He swung his leg over the side of the railing at the front of the box. By now, some members of the audience had looked up. Seeing a man climbing out of the president's box as Booth positioned for the leap to the stage, Rathbone came at him, again grabbing his coattail. Thrown off balance, Booth got tangled in the framed portrait of George Washington hanging on the front of the box. One of his riding spurs snagged one of the flags that decorated the box. He managed to free himself and landed, off balance, but still on his feet. He felt something wrong in his left leg near his ankle, but there was nothing he could do about it now. So picture what's going on here. Shoots Lincoln. Rathbone hears the sound, looks up, sees Booth, goes after him. Booth has his knife, tries to stab him with it. Rathbone blocks it with his forearm. Gets cut up pretty bad. Booth goes to jump, gets his foot caught up in all the decorations out of there, and falls about like a second-story jump onto stage. But he landed wrong, landed on his ankle, snaps his ankle. But his body has so much momentum, so much intensity, adrenaline pumping it through his body that he's able to still be okay. He's all right now. So that's where they are at this point. Where was I? Okay. Booth scrambled to center stage, turned to the audience, and stood up straight. Though every second was precious to his escape, he knew this was his last appearance on the American stage. This would be the performance he would be remembered for all time. All eyes were on him. He stood still, paused to build suspense, and thrust his bloody dagger victoriously into the air. The gas stage lights shone on the shiny blade, now stained with blood, and he yells, "Sic Sempia Tyrannis," he thundered. It was the state motto of Virginia. Thus, always to tyrants, meaning death to the tyrants. And remember, he thought Lincoln was a tyrant. Then Booth shouted, "The South is avenged!" Harry Hawk, the only actor on stage when Booth made the leap, did not understand what was happening. Hawk, more than anyone else in the theater, was in the best position to hear the shot and see Booth climb onto the balcony. Hawk had known Booth and was not likely to mistake him. Hawk stood directly in Booth's escape path. But like any of us, we would have been in shock. He was in shock. He has no idea what's going on. So there's Booth. He's not really sure what's happening, why Booth's even there. You would say, why don't you just grab him? You wish that he had just grabbed him, but he wasn't able to do that at that point. And this is a picture of what it kind of looks like. See if you can get that. President Lincoln in his picture, you see him standing up. He never stood up again. He was shot and slumped over and unfortunately never recovered. When Booth had nearly reached him, Hawk fled. As Booth moved across the stage heading for the wing, one audience member heard him say to himself, "I have done it. I have killed the president." But he didn't know for sure if he had killed him, but he had thought he did. Booth fled into the wing, slashing his dagger at anyone who got in his way. The orchestra conductor said he felt Booth's hot breath as the assassin pushed past him and struck him with his knife. He did not attempt to stop Booth, nor did anyone in the cast try. Booth had taken all the actors backstage by surprise and rushed past them. A voice cried out from the president's box, "Stop that man!" Someone in the audience gasped with fright and delight. Some still thought it was part of the play. "Will no one stop that man?" In anguish, Major Rathbone again pleaded to the crowd below. Clara Harris shouted out, "He has shot the president." And that's where chapter 2 ends. Tomorrow we find out how he gets out and how poor Johnny Peanuts is left holding the bag, so to speak, the peanut bag. We'll find out more. Hope you enjoyed it. You want to go back and listen to it, it's going to be accessed on the live stream. All right, guys, thanks for joining us. Alexa, welcome back. We missed you in Mr. Kavanaugh's class. You superstar. The rest of you, we'll see you soon.